Anyway, what was I talking about? I feel really unprepared for this, you guys. It's been a while since I've read this book, so I'm doing the best I can. But it really did stick with me, so I remember quite a bit of it. I really got to start doing these right after I read the book, because I feel like I just am not doing a good job. But at the same time, a lot of times you do read books for a book club way in advance, or you don't even finish them at all. So, I mean, I guess I'm winning in that respect. Okay, reframed it. Good for me. Moving on. Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Indie Book Club, the show that breaks down and builds up independent authors and their work. My name is Sarah Tosh, independent author in my own right, and today we are going to be talking about the literary fiction work, The Formation of Calcium by M.S. Coe. Now, you might remember M.S. Coe from a previous episode about the book New Veronia, which I actually still have right here. As you know, I don't do videos about books that I didn't like. So right from the start, you know that because this video exists in the first place, I did enjoy this book. There are going to be a lot of spoilers in this video, as you know, if you've seen other of my videos before. So if you either haven't read the book yet and you're planning to, or you think you might want to, or if you have somewhere to be, because this can get pretty long if you have to go rush off to, a congressional meeting or something like that, you're just too busy. I'm gonna read out the Amazon review I left on this book, and then you can go take off and go make the change happen. Almost did that without sounding sarcastic, but I just couldn't quite manage it. I'm sorry, everybody. All right, here we go. Whenever a serial killer is found out, the neighbors often say something like, "He seems so normal. A bit quiet maybe, but I never imagined he'd do anything like that." I would bet they'd say the same thing about Mary Ellen Washi, who is the main character in the book, obviously. Written, or rather transcribed, as a series of self-made recordings, The Formation of Calcium follows one woman on a journey of self-discovery and reclaiming her own feminine power. It's also the origin story of a calculating, cold-blooded serial killer. I'm a sucker for unconventional structures, in-depth character studies, and unreliable narrators, and Formation of Calcium excels at all three. Every sentence is heavy with meaning while still delivered as casually as someone speaking off the top of her head into a microphone. She could be saying nothing, and yet she gives more of herself away with every word. This is a relatively quick, compelling tale told by an oddly charismatic, complex character that will pull you in and refuse to let you go. Spoiler roadblock here. If you don't want spoilers, stop right now and continue later after you've read the book. You've been warned. Main character in this book, Mary Ellen Washi, as I said, wife, mother, burgeoning serial killer. Her husband, Jim Dave, which is an excellent name for a kind of who she claims as a deadbeat husband slash major plot point. Sally is her daughter, a grown daughter who also has a kid. Mary Ellen's in her, I think, 40s or 50s, somewhere around there. Natalie Heap is the woman that Mary Ellen meets once she is in Florida, once the book really gets going. She's basically the secondary character in the book, the main secondary character. And then you've got Tu or Thu, it's T-H-U, I'm going to pronounce it Tu, I'm sorry if that's incorrect. That is Natalie's boyfriend, who later becomes Mary Ellen's boyfriend. Again, spoilers all over the place in this. There's Marcus, who's Natalie's son that she gave up for adoption and failed to tell Mary Ellen about, which comes about at a very inconvenient moment for Mary Ellen later in the book. There is a podcaster. Mary Ellen starts to listen to a podcast from her hometown, done by someone in her hometown. And then there's Maria, who is a church leader, but it's kind of one of those churches where it's like super into like angels and new agey kind of, I don't want to say witchcraft, but yeah, more of that kind of ritualistic. There it is, ritual kind of churchy stuff. There are more, but that's pretty much the big people in this. The majority of the book is set in Florida, present day. I feel like when you say we're in Florida, that's kind of enough. Like, you're kind of like, oh, all right. this is a Florida kind of book. But it's most of it takes place either in the home that Mary Ellen and Natalie live in together. It's kind of this planned community, sort of a retirement-y kind of community. Very nice, very clean. Got some nosy neighbors. There's an HOA, you know, all that stuff. And then it also takes place partially at Natalie's church, and then the other church, the ritualistic church. That's kind of the world we're living in, this kind of sticky, sunny, overbearing, retiree community. How we get to that world is we have Mary Ellen, who's this kind of downtrodden wife. She has a grown child. Her husband got injured at work. He is depressed. He, you know, just is kind of aimless. And she feels like he's dragging her down, basically, and that he doesn't go to work. She has to work 2 jobs to put food on the table. So she kills him, dumps him in the water somewhere, kind of near her property, and then takes off running to Florida. So for a long time, the police just think that she's missing and he's missing. They're both missing, and she's getting this news through that podcaster. Like I said, eventually she finds this crime podcast that's doing a story on her, and she listens to it, of course. Her fleeing to Florida is the beginning of the book, the murder and the subsequent flight. And then after that, it's all about her trying to assume this new personality of Dee Dee, and basically gloms on to Natalie, ends up moving into her house, and through sets of circumstances, accelerating, you know, intensifying pressure and just kind of a mental breakdown, she ends up killing Natalie too, and then assumes her life, which you kind of see coming because from the very beginning, there's talk about how much they look alike. You know, like I said, she dumps her husband's body in the swamp. Natalie's, she like ties up in cellophane and stuffs in the closet in a suitcase, which, I mean, honestly, I'm no professional here, but it really feels like if you're gonna kill someone in Florida, there are millions of perfectly good alligators running around. Crocodiles, alligators, whatever. A lot of living dinosaurs running around that you could easily just, you know, boop. Anyway, but that's just, you know, just a thought. From a narrative perspective, of course. The other thing that makes this really interesting is that, as I said, this is all told in kind of an oral tradition. So Mary Ellen is supposedly recording into tapes, like cassette tapes, which are even, it shows you presumably what kind of thing she's using. So you kind of like do that, which that's kind of clever right there. The premise is that she has recorded this just off the cuff, and someone at some point transcribed it, which is always something I struggle with when I get one of these books that's like an oral story, an oral story that is, but it's written down. It's like, well, who transcribed it? How did we get to this final state where it's published and I'm reading it and not listening to it? And I don't know if there's an Audible book for this yet. I hope there will be at some point. I feel like that would be a missed opportunity if there's not. Anyway, random tangent aside about all that stuff. This is a literary book. So if you're kind of going on just like what happens in the book, it's very easy to say that not a whole lot happens. There's a lot of sitting around the house. There's a lot of I'm listening to a podcast. Yeah, there's a couple of times where, yeah, I murdered some guy, but it's all very low key because it's also told after the fact. She's narrating that it already happened. And it does need to be told in this way that people speak. So there's not a ton of lyrical language or lots of fancy prose. It's very much, you know, dialogue all the way down. But because it's literary, the character kind of is the plot, and the plot is the character. So that's pretty much it. The plot is the character's journey, especially in this book. So we're gonna just jump right into that. Like in New Veronia, if you watched that one or if you've read that book, this follows a very clear character journey from a victim, or at least a victim in her own mind. She might be a victim, but, you know, unreliable narrator again too. From victim to pretty clear villain. In the beginning, like I said, she's blaming her husband for pretty much everything that's gone wrong in her life, saying, you know, I had no choice. I had to do it. He was ruining my life. She blames her daughter for like moving out of the house and never speaking to her and never seeing, you know, she never gets to see her grandkid. It also doesn't seem like she was that interested as a mom. I don't know if she was necessarily negligent or abusive. There's no abuse. Jim Dave doesn't abuse her. And as far as we know, Mary Ellen isn't abusing him or her daughter. But again, we only have Mary Ellen's word on it, so. But it doesn't seem like it. It's just kind of, she really doesn't care about anyone aside from how they're serving her needs. And then she also blames her mom for an incident when she was a child where she was playing with a dollhouse out in the yard, and she flew a toy plane into the dollhouse, just, you know, like kids do. And then a few seconds later, apparently a plane flew into her house. Nobody was killed, it just kind of wrecked the house. It was a small plane, it sounds like. And her mom, like, basically did, like, some prayer stuff, or she did something, she gave her medicine to take away her witchiness. So she blames her mom for kind of stealing all of her feminine power when she was this kid. She believes that she caused that. She believes it. Hardcore. It's less obvious at the beginning that she believes it, but by the end, you know that she wholesale believed that she did that. Also very much plays the victim. You know, everything is done to her. None of it is her fault. Even when she kills Natalie, it's because she told Natalie that she had killed her husband. And Natalie told her, like anyone would, you need to go to the police. I don't know that I would have necessarily told a killer, like, I'm gonna turn you in. But I mean, what killer tells someone that they killed someone? Like, obviously you're gonna have to kill them. Maybe she knew that. It kind of feels like she was itching to do something like that again, and she was just kind of giving herself an excuse. Also, when you're reading this book, The Formation of Calcium, the title, yeah, it's a theme, and we'll go into that later, but the bigger, what I was gonna say now is it's also the title of one of the tapes. So each of these tapes, like, let me see if I can find one, Plastic Waste in the Ocean, Balancing the Family Checkbook, they're all like these innocuous titles of like self-help kind of stuff. That just goes to show that she's more cunning than this helpless, like, oh, I was so beaten down, I didn't have a choice, I had to kill my husband because he was mean to me. By the end, however, she's completely embracing her power as this witch, as this killer, and by the end of it, she's like excited to get away with it. Sounds like she's excited to do it again. It kind of sounds like she has her next victim picked out. This is very much a, when bad things happen, it's because someone else did them to me, and it's their fault. And when good things happen, it's because I'm so amazing and my abilities are just that powerful that I can overcome all of this idiocy and laziness and treachery, and like, I can, you know, I can rise above all of it. Which, I'm not a psychiatrist, but that feels pretty narcissistic to me, I think, from what I gather of narcissism. That being said, some of her manipulations are nothing short of just breathtaking. There's one, I'm not going to talk about all of them, but there's one I will mention, that she, spoilers, she kills Natalie's son after he comes to find her. After he comes to find Natalie, she pretends to be Natalie because they've never met. I forget what happens. I think he literally just was bothering her, so she killed him. It's one of the last murders that you see. I think it is the last murder that you see. And so her reasoning is kind of really just, I'm not gonna pretend I have motives anymore. I'm just gonna start killing people for fun, as a hobby. She, you know, does the whole cellophane in the suitcase in the closet, again, completely ignoring all of the alligators. His girlfriend comes to find him, and he had told her, Mary Ellen, that his girlfriend was bulimic. And she comes over and she's asking these questions, and, you know, Mary Ellen's like, I gotta get rid of her. She sets like all of the food in the fridge on the counter and like is like, oh my God, you poor girl, your boyfriend's missing. It sounds like he left you. Here, eat something. This will make you feel better. And the girl eats a bunch, and then asks to go to the bathroom. And Mary Ellen's like, oh yeah, my bathrooms are broken. Sorry. So the girl leaves because she's bulimic and needs to go purge. And it's just like the most horrible manipulation, but also like, wow, that is, and you just thought of that off the top of your head. That's amazing. But terrible. And now that feels psychopathic to me. So we've got a narcissistic psychopath just running her way through a Florida planned community. Obviously, the first theme I'm going to address is in the title because, you got to be wondering, what does that even mean? When I first learned the name and figured out, what it was going to be about a serial killer because they kind of talk about it on the back. I thought it was to do with bones. Bones are made of calcium. I didn't know how, but it seemed, bones, murdery. But it's not that. It has to do, in fact, with something that she talks about in the chapter that's called The Formation of Calcium in the book. To back up a little bit, the pastor Maria of the ritualistic church, she offers to do an exorcism on Mary Ellen because Mary Ellen, for a lot of the book, is being haunted by the ghosts of the people she killed. Her husband, and also, interestingly, Mary Ellen, because she thinks of herself as Natalie. So Mary Ellen is dead as a ghost. So, even if we pretend, this is a fictional world, let's pretend ghosts are real. We know that's not Mary Ellen. So this is all just some kind of something crazy that she's going through. They're, harassing her. They're stealing her sleep. It's all their fault. And she goes to the pastor of the church, the ritualistic church that is kind of into angel worship and all of this. And she says, I need help. And the pastor says, great, I can give you an exorcism. The pastor tries to do this. And Mary Ellen is like, oh no, these ghosts are actually my strength. They're my witchiness. Come back to me. This woman is trying to steal them from me. And she kind of like latches them to her side a little bit and sort of manipulates these ghosts, these fake ghosts that are a figment of her imagination, pretty much for sure, into basically giving her more power in her own head. After this exorcism that didn't work in the way that she thought it was going to work, it didn't exorcise her demons. It kind of made her a demon in a way. She has this to say. Pastor Maria, though, she'd awoken me to the steady drip that had been forming my strong inner core all this while, just the way calcium builds out of drops of water. You can't see the minerals there in the water. You can only see that what grows over time is a novel thing, unexpected, but also entirely natural. Now that I have transformed into who I really am, I feel more content than I have in a long while. So that makes a lot more sense. Also, that is some straight up like Zodiac killer, like serial killer 101 right there. I don't know about you guys, but I watch probably way too much true crime TV. I've watched, Confessions of a Serial Killer and all of that stuff. And there's always that part where they're like, I always knew something was different about me. And then it all came together and I was set free like a butterfly. They probably don't say butterfly, but that's essentially what it is. Also, as a side note, if any of your friends ever start saying shit like that to you, always just back off. And if you have to be around them, just like have a phone nearby or something just in case. That's a PSA from Indie Book Club. You're welcome. Second theme we're going to talk about is the unreliable narrator. Of course, we're talking about an MS Co book. Okay, this is only her second book, but the first one also was a very unreliable narrator focused. And this one just like doubles down on it, but it doubles down on it like 4 times or something. Obviously, we have Mary Ellen, who is a narcissist, a psychopath, nothing's her fault, and we have no idea what's true and what isn't. We kind of just have to take her word for it. New Veronia was told, I think the like artifice behind that was it was written in the corners of a Bible after he was in jail. So that was a written transcription. This is a lot more directly like, boom, this is her in the moment saying this stuff. And we can't trust, like, any of it. The next person that is unreliable is Natalie. Natalie says she never had kids. A son shows up that she gave up for adoption. So we have, a liar, basically, that she's living with. The podcast host, which we haven't really talked about too much, this is a woman who is living in Mary Ellen's old community and is doing this crime podcast. She was doing a mommy podcast before, but she moved over to this one. And during the course of this podcast, we start to hear that, like, her marriage is breaking down. Life isn't as perfect as her last podcast made everyone believe. And Mary Ellen kind of confirms this because she knew this person and she was kind of one of the popular girls, whatever the middle-aged equivalent of that is. God, I hope I never find out. But so there's that. This podcaster who basically admits that everything she's said up until this podcast series that she's doing is kind of a smoke and mirrors a little bit. Like, her husband's been cheating on her. She's been unhappy this whole time. Pretty much everybody else has a secret. To the boyfriend, they had been dating online, Natalie and him, which is why Mary Ellen's kind of able to step into the role because he's never really met Natalie in person. So there's a lot of stuff he shares that didn't seem to be shared previously. A lot of stuff that didn't seem to be maybe even talked about honestly previously, and we don't know what Natalie would have done if it had been her and not Mary Ellen, who was trying to not make waves and just kind of get away with this. And then we have Natalie's son, Marcus, who shows up, who's just a freeloader and kind of also has these poor me stories and everything. Nothing's his fault. It feels like actually he's probably a lot more like Mary Ellen than he is like Natalie, although Natalie was also a liar. So everybody kind of has this self-absorbed, I'm the hero of my story. And that's actually really accurate. Like, everyone, no matter what role you play in this sort of objective world, we're all the heroes of our own story. We're the good guys, no matter what I do. I think I'm the good guy. If 100 people look at whatever situation I'm in from the outside and all of them say, yeah, you're an asshole, if 100 people tell me that, I'm probably gonna maybe think about it, but like, it's still my story and it's gonna be my redemption and I'm always the good guy no matter what I do. And that informs this. Mary Ellen thinks she's a good person. She thinks she's a good person who just happens to be a witch that can murder people. And it doesn't matter because she's a good person, so if she does it, it can't be evil. There are lots of people like that. We're all kind of like that, to some degree, I think. Finally, let's talk about why tapes. Like I said, New Veronia was done in an unreliable narrator, but he wrote it. He wrote it down. This one is narrative. Why? Why did we do it this way? Why did MSCO do it this way? The royal we, in that we all had a role of creating this book. Never mind, I just screwed up. Don't listen to me. So I think there's a few reasons why this works really well for this character and for this story. One, again, going back to my expertise in true crime, such as it is, serial killers love to talk. Once they're caught, typically speaking, even some of them before they're caught, they talk to the media. I don't know, do they go on social media? I wouldn't advise it. Maybe they do, I'm not sure. Maybe the dark web forum somewhere. That I don't know, I can't speak to that. But I do know that many times once they're caught, they won't shut up. If you've seen the show Mindhunter, that is one of the big plot points in it is serial killers love to talk about their crimes once they're caught. They want people to appreciate them. They want people to say, oh my God, this is amazing. If Mary Ellen were real and she were here and I talked about that bulimia thing to her, that would be like a dream come true. Me telling her that like, that was a move of genius. That would be like, just, what she wants. So I think that makes sense that she would want to. She can't talk to anyone else before she's caught, really. She tried to do that with Natalie and it blew up in her face. So she has these tapes and she talks to the tapes. And it seems very consistent with what a serial killer would do. Second, I think that Mary Ellen, just based on, everything about her, is very impulsive. And I think writing would require too much analysis. Because when you write something down, you're not just, you can, just do the typing. I do that for my first drafts. You just kind of go blah, 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 blah. But it's not, usually you're still kind of like, oh my God, is this the word I want? Is this the structure I want? Is this how I want to say it? What am I even saying? Does this even need to be here at all? And then you go delete half of it because that's what you do. I feel like Mary Ellen wouldn't have any patience for that. She just wants it to go boom and not have to think about it again. It's out of her head and it's down where she doesn't have to look at it. And that's the other thing is tapes. If you don't go through the trouble of playing it back, it's not like a book where it just opens and it's right in front of you. She never has to see it again. In a notebook, she might have to face it. And I don't think that she would care for that at all. The last reason that I find this really interesting is when you look at it next to the presence of the podcaster. The podcast, like a podcast, any podcast, it's supposed to seem like this, very casual, off the cuff, especially when you have two people talking to each other. It's supposed to seem like this sort of ad-libbed kind of thing. And, some of them are, but then it's edited. And especially with true crime podcasts, it's usually pretty heavily scripted. They're narrating things. So in a way, that kind of makes the podcast less honest than what Mary Ellen is doing, because you get to edit stuff, and you get to take out the stuff you don't like. And Mary Ellen really does just let it fly. All the good, all the bad, all the crazy. It's all there. Or, are they both just lying to themselves? And that's the other thing, is that, like I said, this podcaster, she is kind of pivoting into true crime and away from the mommy blog podcast that she was doing because her life is a sham. So in a way, it mirrors Mary Ellen's transformation of being this housewife turned murderer. This woman is a mommy blogger talking about, being a housewife to talking about murder, whereas Mary Ellen actually did it. So that's kind of interesting too. And just to go off on a tangent here for a second, it kind of makes me wonder about this. I'm reading stuff right now. This is not just all off the top of my head. I definitely, I read the book, obviously. I let it simmer for arguably way too long. And then I wrote down a bunch of notes. I think this is a 4-page document that I'm reading from right here. And I think I've hit most of it, but God knows. And then when I'm done with this, I will edit it and, add all the fun, pretty bells and whistles in the head, like the head and the tail, whatever it is called. I don't remember. It's been a long time since I've been in editing school. And you will get to see something that is at least marginally less of a mess than if I were to just put it out there like this. So, what's true? Let's not go down that road. God, I'm sick of that question. I do want to mention real quick that if you've been wondering why this book looks so tiny, it's not because I'm a giant, it's because it is. It is significantly smaller than like a normal book, but it's the size of a Kindle, basically. So I don't know if that was an artistic choice, if that was a financial choice, if that was, I'm not sure. I like it. I think it's super cute. Really tiny. It's very fun to hold and read from. The last thing I'll say about Mary Ellen, the character, since she is this entire book, is there are moments in it, and this is something that I think is just very well done by the author, because it's so true of narcissists. There are moments in it where you generally are trying to forgive her for everything. She's not apologizing. She's just telling a story about a nice time she had with her daughter. I actually have it written down here. She would get her ice cream as a kid. She talks about how Sally always wore overalls and she would always fill it with useless stuff, and she would take her to get ice cream. And Sally would do this monster impression that, quote, that cracked me up and caused the Amish girl who sold the ice cream to turn red with anxiety. On its face, that's like, oh, that's really sweet. You're hanging out with your daughter. And then it's kind of like, well, okay, what does that note about the Amish girl have to do with anything? And then it's like, are you excited because you're hanging out with your daughter, or did you enjoy seeing someone uncomfortable and kind of low-key torturing them a little bit? But that is so interesting. And that's not the only moment. There are lots of moments, especially when she's talking about her daughter and her grandkid, where you're just like, they feel real. It feels like she's sad that she's lost this connection. It feels like, you know, there's some part of her that's human, and you want to believe that she's not completely horrible. And I think anyone who's known a narcissist in their life knows exactly what that kind of desire feels like, and exactly how sort of nefarious it can be. It's moments like that where when you really think about what she's saying in those passages, you just kind of get chills. You're just like, oh, this person is evil. I'm fully aware that this is a not real book. It's not based on anything real as far as I know. This woman doesn't exist, and she never has in this completely fictional story, which makes it even more impressive, I think, to create someone that is so completely a person and so completely a narcissist, and then still have those layers of like, I want to believe the best about this person. It's just so impressive. Highly recommend this book. I recommend it probably more than New Veronia. I firmly believe that an author's work gets better over time typically, with exception. But in this case, I believe it's absolutely true. New Veronia is wonderful. This is better. So go check this out. I really can't recommend it enough. It is short, it's fast. You know, you can just kind of shove it in your purse, almost shove it in your pocket, depending on how big your pockets are. It's real close to that. And if you do read it, I would absolutely love to hear what people have to say about this, because it's just a fascinating character study. And I know people are going to take different things away from it. So please come back, email me, comment on this video. I'd love to hear what you think about it. I'm going to be on a little bit of a break. I want to keep doing these videos, but I am working on a number of other things, including a new series of my own, and one or two other projects. So I'm going to be taking a little bit of a break from Indie Book Club, but if you reach out to me, if you have a book that you want me to review and you reach out to me specifically about that book, I will get it on my calendar, because I love talking to people about their books. I love helping people with, marketing their books. It's a tough gig, I know. So I want to help do what I can out here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you somewhere down the road.